It's interesting, guys, when you think about a change of scenery for a player, a lot of times that can be what sort of is a catalyst to ignite this next level of their career. Do you see, with what you know about Russell Westbrook, and I know you've been high on him for so long, that those adjustments will happen with Houston?
Well, he showed me that he was willing to adapt when he allowed Paul George to emerge as the basic go-to guy this previous season. But I want to make sure I'm one voice that continues to quell something that I'm hearing. That OKC traded Paul George and Russell Westbrook to accommodate them. That ain't what happened here. What happened here is they felt like they'd be better off without those guys and rebuilding. That's what happened. That's number one. Number two, Russell's comfort level in OKC. And if you felt like he couldn't adjust or change his game, that's what the head coach is hired to do, to allow players to play to their strengths and or conform, and or usually the coach loses his job. So I just want to acknowledge, you don't just trade all of the players that OKC traded and then all of a sudden we keep giving them pass after pass. When you lose KD and Harden and Russ and PG and Oladipo comes through your doors, at some point there has to be some level of accountability for allowing those players in your system to be able to flourish long term.
Yeah, so I want to follow up really quickly. Why did they want to trade Russ and PG? Like, why did they say rebuilding's a better option than
well, maybe they didn't want to pay the luxury tax.
Yeah.
How about that? Maybe they looked down at their roster and they looked at the landscape of the Western Conference and say, why are we paying this in luxury tax when we're not the favorite to win it all?
Why did they just say that, you know what, with this lineup, we can only go so far. So, you know what, if we can't compete for a championship with these assets, then you know what, we need to reboot and all of a sudden now rebuild. And how can we do that? We can do it as a small market through the draft and collecting assets. So they're looking at their best interest. And part of their best interest, though, is to basically accommodate players that have been good to them. The greatest point you just made is Russ did defer because Paul George was in the conversation for most valuable player this year, not Russell Westbrook. The reason he was is because of the way Russell Westbrook played. He gets it. He understands what his role is going to be. You know, at the end of the game, it's going to come down to matchups. If Mike D'Antoni thinks he has a better matchup, maybe the ball be in his hands. If not, he's going to be driving closeouts when Harden gets in the lane, and he's going to be making
I know
plays.
one thing. You look down at your phone and you see Oklahoma City's area code calling, you picking it up. Because I'm telling you, they moving some really good players, and they're adding to some situations around the league. I'm just saying.
Okay, let's see what Stephen A. Smith had to say about all of this. His reaction on the trade on SportsCenter last night, specifically about the Rockets.
I love it. Personally, I mean, I think it puts Houston right back in the mix. We all know that James Harden was a top 2 MVP candidate, was the MVP last season, not the one that just passed. We know what he brings to the table. And the relationship with him and Chris Paul wasn't ideal at the end. Having said all of that, James Harden reuniting with Russell Westbrook makes them incredibly formidable. He can't be guarded. He's bigger, he's stronger, and faster than Chris Paul, not to mention a little bit younger as well. Houston obviously is in the mix. Yet again, this is a move that had to be made. I have no problem with Houston making it whatsoever. I think from a talent perspective, it puts them right back in title contention picture. My only question mark is whether or not Mike D'Antoni can coach them on that level. We know he can win regular season games. We know he can win a couple of playoff series. But can he coach them in the manner that they need to be coached to get them over the hump? That's the lone question mark about the Houston Rockets after this deal. I see no other question marks to think of.
Okay, so Stephen A. thinks Rockets, and rightfully so, I might add, are at least in contention to win a title and in contention in the West. Who's the favorite in the West for you?
The favorite in the West for me probably is between the Clippers and the Utah Jazz.
Where do you put the Rockets?
I hover them around 4 or 5 with the Lakers and Denver, depending on injuries and players continue to develop. But one of the things that also allowed this deal to happen is the outspoken and respectfully flamboyant owner that the Houston Rockets have in a different way from the Clippers. They get a chance to see all of these big names popping up in different places, and they're like, what about us? I'm willing to pay the luxury tax to have James Harden and Russell Westbrook on my team. And Stephen A. just alluded to something that I just acknowledged. If we're talking about can Mike D'Antoni coach those two guys, at some point the question probably is going to be asked, couldn't Billy Donovan coach Paul George and Russell Westbrook as well? So these things are going to continue to play out as we have.
Here's the deal. I mean, we'll say where do these guys stand? Like, here's the deal. The other guy's trying to win also. Like, Houston's gotten better, but so have the Lakers. So have the Clippers. Denver's not going anywhere. Utah's backcourt, let me tell you something. Connolly and Donovan Mitchell, that might be the best backcourt in the West. So, like, look, have they gotten better yet? Are they going to be in the conversation yet? But, like, people like trashing Mike D'Antoni or even trashing Billy Donovan. Here's the deal. Those teams are good teams. But there are other teams that have good combinations and good players. And you know what? They didn't win either. Because you know what? You had the Golden State Warriors. All right? You had other teams that were better than them.
How about this? These 7 teams in the West are going to make the playoffs.
It's crazy.
Clippers, Lakers, Denver,
Yep.
Utah, Portland, who has a terrific backcourt in the Mama's Boys, and Houston. And I didn't even mention the Spurs, who we always sleep on, or the Warriors, who are going to have.
Are the Warriors going to make the playoffs? That's the big question. Everyone's talking about New Orleans. I don't see New Orleans making
They'll make the playoffs over Sacramento, the Mavs, and Pelicans.
Yeah, exactly, 100%.
Well, real quickly, so with all of this, where do you have the Rockets? If
I've got them
as
fifth. I've got the Clippers, Lakers, Denver, Jazz, and Houston. I probably would flip the Jazz and Denver.
Man.
And I'm not sure the Lakers. I think the Lakers are the most overvalued team because I think 5 years ago, said yesterday, they would be really good. And today, I don't see them being as good, even with Anthony and LeBron. In terms of, you think they're the second best team in the West? You just said they weren't. You just said the Jazz.
I think they're a top 4 team.
I know.
I don't think they're overrated.
I had them as the top 4, but you're looking at me
Vegas
like
still thinks they're winning at all.
Put them as number 2 then. Why are you so high in the Jazz?
But I'm just saying, like, a lot of times betting lines and odds are based on teams' popularity.
Totally.
But if you're going to find a sneaky bet on somebody, I put my money on Utah.
Okay.
Well, Utah's good.
And a lot of people would agree with you on that too. They've made some good moves that people